Good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of Forever Young, the program that celebrates life for those of us who are over the age of 50, to say the least. I'm your host, David C. Linton, and again, it's a pleasure to be with you. It seems like we just started, and we're now coming to the end of another season. Wow, where did the year go? It's already March, and we're in almost at Easter, spring break for some people. So again, this is just a great opportunity for us to just share some information with you. Of course, I could not share information with you on this program Forever Young without the assistance input of my two wonderful co-hosts. First, it's the beautiful Miss Jean Hendricks. Good afternoon, Jean.
Good afternoon, David. It is a pleasure to be here as always. I can't wait to talk with our guests. I'm so excited about it. Back to you, David.
Yes, and of course my other bookend, the two. I am such a lucky guy. I got two beautiful women to keep me keep me standing, and of course that's none other than Dr. Sharon Mitchell. She does it all. She does everything that makes the show come together, and so as always, welcome, Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you, David. It's always a pleasure sharing this platform with both you and Miss Hendricks. What an honor. And we've got an exciting guest for you today. Great seeing you.
That's right. That's right. We do have a great guest. And before we today's topic is one it's important to everyone. I mean, it's something that we all kind of in some form or fashion. And we really want to take the moment to share with our audience about this. And it's something that, well, we're just gonna we before we get into it, it's something about security. Let's just say this. You know, there's something about not just identity theft but cyber identity. Especially there's so many pranks and people are calling, and telemarketers are working overtime and they're trying to steal your information, whether you're online or whatever. So our guest today is going to help us peel back some of the layers and give us some tips on how we can be mindful and stay alert. But of course, before we do that, we know that Gene always has a pearl of wisdom that sort of sets the stage for what we're going to talk about today. So, Gene, I know you're not going to disappoint our guests. What do you have for us today?
Yes, David, I have a very short one, but a very sweet one. And it's simply entitled Better Days. The World Wide Web, we create worlds here on the internet, connecting to those we will never see, chatting over the virtual web, hoping for better days, day by day, and click by click. Back to you, David.
Well, thank you. That is so appropriate, click by click. And so let's just get right to our guest today. Today we have a person who has an experience over a decade in cybersecurity, privacy, and risk management space. He's an expert in corporation such as Deloitte, Nike, and the Georgia Technology Research Institute, also known as GTRI, has led cross-functional efforts through her entire system in developing and changing management cycles in order to mitigate the risk and implement compliance strategies for regulatory requirements. Currently she is a privacy engineer at Google. Now, we all use Google, and Google knows more about us than some of our family members. So she's transforming the siloed and manual GRC process and more agile, automated, and integrated programs. And she's an alumna of the illustrious HBCU FAMU, where she obtained her Bachelor's of Science in Business. Additionally, she holds a Master's in Cybersecurity from Brown University and a Master's of International Business from Nova Southeastern University. Lastly, she's the founder and executive director of the BGIC Foundation, also known as Black Girls in Cyber, whose mission is to increase industry awareness and diversity in the cybersecurity, privacy, and STEM for women of color, STEM. And she's been a featured speaker at the National Security Agency, Black Women in STEM Conference. And we're delighted to have her today as a guest on Forever Young. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you, Miss Talia Parker.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here to speak on such an important topic.
Yes, and you know, it's so thank for you. I mean, obviously, you have a background in something that we really all, know. Everybody knows the web, and you hear all these things about being safe, and especially when you get all these links that look like they're authentic, and you want to hit them, and oops, there goes your world. So while we're
Right.
focused on what you do as being, so today we just want to break it down in layman's term and help out our audience understand. So we're focusing on what you do as being safe while surfing the web for older adults. Can you share your background in technology field and some of the general do's and don'ts, and we'll dive in deeper.
Yeah, so thank you very much. So I've been in this space for about a decade, and I've always worked within risk. They all really just complement each other. So I've had an opportunity to work in the consulting space where I helped large organizations to become more secure, whether that was taking a look at their security programs, in looking at where they may have vulnerabilities, and creating strategic approaches on how they can solve for that. Um, I also have opportunities to just work collaboratively with teams, whether they are on the operational side of the house, if they're on the legal side of the house, or if you're more of like a developer that's implementing certain solutions. I am usually what you would call like the middleman who is able to work, but also being able to transform what that means to the business, from a risk standpoint. And so that's like really where I fall within the GRC space.
Okay, very good.
So can you share your background in the field? I gave a little bit. I gave the broad strokes about your
Yeah.
background. I'm always interested. People's background
Mhm.
and what leads them to these fields.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, I remember I was working in banking, and someone, a peer mentor of mine, said, "Hey, have you ever looked into privacy?" So that's really what I was just trying to pursue at first. And she said, not a lot of people really know what it is from a career standpoint. It's kind of new, so now would be a good time to try and make the transition. And she was right. So I quit my job in banking actually and took a 4-month internship, which was much lower pay, um, and went to another city where I interned for 4 months. Management and privacy is really the protection of personal data. And so it's one aspect of the security, right? When you talk about the rules and policies that drive us that, and using the security to protect the data. And so that experience was just enough to really catapult my career to one of the big four, is what we call like the large consulting and accounting firms. And so Deloitte, I went there and I spent a couple of years, and that's when privacy fell under their cybersecurity offering. And that's when I started to learn about identity and access management, which is basically when you think about like passwords and multi-factor authentication, things like that falls within the identity and access management umbrella. Um, I also did, write system security plans for large organizations. And basically, that's just taking different domains of security and just making sure that an organization have implemented all of the right technical solutions to protect every aspect of the organization, whether it's like, networking, what you allow in and out of your organization, and who can access what systems can talk to each other. Or, if it's the people aspect of it, roles and responsibility, and making sure we have the right rules, right? And, categorizing people correctly based on their role and functions. And so being able to really strategically create plans for organizations to be compliant, because outside of that, you have a lot of laws and regulation that
Right.
drives the why behind why my job is so important, right? So companies hire me because legally they're required to protect the systems and the data that they collect from their consumers.
Wow.
Okay, very good.
Okay, well, Gene.
That's yes, I do have a question I'd like to ask you also. How did you start this journey in the STEM? And for our audience, and STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math field. How did you start that?
Yeah, well, I was never really thrilled about this space because I never really saw people who look like me in this space. And so I think the pivotal moment in my career on this journey was really that peer mentor that I had that really showed me that this was an option, because my view of it was very different from what it actually is today. Now that I work in this space, it just didn't look very fun. It seemed a little boring. I'm very much, although I'm introverted, I'm also a people person, so I love personal interaction, and so I didn't really get that from the STEM side of the house, and that was just due to lack of representation. So I think having another woman of color who can take the time out to really kind of lay it out and say, here are some options, here's the why, here's
Right.
what the opportunities look like. I think that was like a big start for me on this journey.
Oh, good. Very
Okay.
good. Very good.
So
Okay,
we
Sharon.
see when you talk, yes, when you talk about STEM, one of the things that we know about STEM that we've heard about recent has been the need to get African American women in this field. And so we see that you founded something in an organization called Black Girls in Cyber. Can you tell us a little bit about that organization and what was behind your actually starting that organization?
Yes, sure. So in 2020, as we all know, the entire world shut down. And most of us who were not essential workers were forced to work from home. Fortunately for me, I work in a field where I was able to do most of my work remotely. And,
Mhm.
you know, being able to work remotely, although I was always used to being the only woman in the room or the only person of color or a combination, I think it was also having that visual aspect of it. So, we all converted to more video meetings, and so it was a constant reminder that I am, the only minority in the room. And so I started these Facebook Live series called Black Girls in Cyber, and I would invite
Wow.
different African American women who were working in different aspects of the field to come and share their stories, very similar to as I'm doing now, and what their journey was, and to just really create more industry awareness around what this looks like and what the path to get there looks like, because it's very different for everyone. And then in 2021, I did a campaign called Share the Mic in Cyber, where we partnered with different allies we were doing, and they really amplified minority voices on their platform. And through that mentorship, I was, encouraged to turn my Black Girls in Cyber live series into a nonprofit. And I was
Wow.
very fearful of doing that at first because nonprofits just seemed like a whole lot of work. But through the mentorship, I was like, you know what? He's right. I could really make an impact. I can reach more people. If I had a nonprofit, I can get more support. And so I then took the initiative to build a board and really establish the nonprofit aspect of it. And then in September 2021, we launched our first cohort. And so one of the things that Black Girls in Cyber do, our programs are broken up into 4 different areas. We have our annual fellowship, four tracks, four program tracks. You can do cybersecurity, privacy, software engineer, or product management. And basically, what we do, we select 10 women into each of these categories. And for a 7-month period, starting March all the way through October, they are dedicating their time to a curriculum that we have created for them, to help them to skill up, become more talented and aware in this specific scope of work. And then we also partner them with mentors who are already doing the work in this space. And then the end goal is really to help them get certified. So we provide scholarships by purchasing all of their resources and tools to get them certified, building their network, and also giving them a window of opportunity to interview for some of the top corporations who are also our strategic partners. And we partner with HBCUs. We also do a number of webinar events and hope to launch our first annual conference here in Atlanta. And, we are always looking to build more strategic partners so that we can include more people in the program.
Wow.
Well, that is really commendable to
It
see a
is.
need and to fill a need.
Yes.
That's the
Right.
importance.
Mhm.
Because again, the fact that I guess there's so many questions we want to ask. You gave so much food there,
Yeah.
so many
Yes.
nuggets for us to chill on, to bite on. So, is there a reason why aren't African Americans pursuing careers in these fields? I mean, because like STEM, science, and math, there seems to be the ones that when you had a chance in school, I'm taking less math classes. I don't want to do that.
Yep.
Give me that college prep course. No. So,
Yeah.
are you seeing a trend based on some of those phobias, if you will, or why aren't,
Yeah.
especially in this age when we are in such a technological age?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's interesting because I do feel like there's more access to resources and information now than when I was in my undergraduate program and then even before that. Um, but I know for me, I think why there are not more of us in these fields is the lack of awareness in terms of like these
Mhm.
opportunities exist. And then I think due to lack of representation, there's not as many of us in leadership roles. And so
Right.
if you don't really see yourself, you don't really
See it.
feel empowered
Mhm.
to pursue, you don't feel like it's necessarily achievable sometimes.
Right.
Um, because even me who have been in the space for some times, I still have challenges that I come across, and I have to learn how to really strategically navigate the space, right? And to be able to
Mhm.
create more opportunities for me to grow and elevate. But I think the lack of awareness and lack of representation are the
Mhm.
two biggest things for why African Americans are not pursuing these careers. And it's not because we're not smart enough or we can't do the
Right.
job, but I
Mhm.
think if you're not aware of it, and sometimes culturally, we've been taught for, especially me, I was born in Jamaica. So culturally, it was like a doctor, lawyer, teacher. Like it was like those very basic,
Mhm.
categories. You never really colored outside of the box. And so
Mhm.
even going off to college, I didn't
Okay.
even know the different types of options that were ahead of
Mhm.
me. And so I think for us African Americans who are in these spaces, we do have a responsibility, which is why I appreciate opportunities like this because, to our viewers who are watching, that's creating awareness. That's, saying, hey, there is
Yes.
a path, there's an option, and here's someone who is doing it. And so I think that's what we need to do more of. Those of us who are taking up this space, we need to be able to give back in this way so that we can bring others to come along with us.
Very good. Awesome.
Excellent.
Awesome.
So, G,
Can you tell us how the statistics as far as people of color in the STEM program, including women? How many are there? Because I have not really been in tune to this particular program, and then I also want to know the age group that this appeals to.
Well, I think statistically, well, more specific for security, because, and it's probably even lower for STEM in general because it includes all of these different areas. So men outnumber women at a 3-to-1 ratio in the security space alone. And then women make up about 24% of force. And then minorities are even less of that. And so, from an age group, I think with what I'm seeing, particularly, especially with Black girls in cyber, when we announce like we're receiving applications for our programming, we see that our programs is split into two types of age groups, right? And so half of them may be like at the bachelor, like their 4 year, getting ready to graduate with their 4 year degree, or they may be pursuing a master's of some sort. And then the other half, which I'm really passionate about, is folks who have been in the space in like another career for years, and deciding to make a full career transition into the space, which is why I love Black girls in cyber, because I don't think it would be fair for someone who worked for 16 plus years to have to go back to school necessarily, right? So having a more non-traditional path to entry, I think, is also important by creating these opportunities. But I also have a friend who, she was a nurse practitioner for 14 years. And actually, she was also an essential worker. And the pandemic really did a number on her. And she just really wanted the flexibility and opportunity to do more for her family and be there more physically. And she, in less than a year, she was able to transition into cybersecurity through cyber. So that's a really
Yeah.
true success story of what the other half looks
Mhm.
like from an age group demographic.
Very good. Awesome.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
amazing. Yeah,
Yes.
that's amazing to see somebody transition over to a new career and still be successful.
Mhm.
I know
Yeah,
that
it,
your organization though focuses on mentorship, and I'm assuming that that probably helped this person as well. Can you talk a little bit about why the mentoring is important in your organization as well?
yeah, I think mentorship is a key component of our program. Also going back to the lack of representation, there's also the challenges of not only getting started, but there's also like a retainment issue. So even
Mhm.
after African Americans are able to kind of like pierce through all of the barriers to entry and
Mhm.
land these opportunities, they're having a challenge being there because of uh, the culture. For African
Mhm.
Americans, it's hard to adapt. We're often looked over, even when we work hard, and so we're not giving the same opportunities in the workplace for advancement and promotions and things like that. With mentorship, that it kind of helps you navigate all of those challenges when you really want to throw in the towel and just not want to pursue some of these opportunities. It's not
Mhm.
easy to navigate a space where you're the only. And so I think through mentorship, it's a key to kind of help that encouragement, keep going, and just providing the resources and getting access to additional network opportunities.
It's
Well, for
wonderful.
those of you who are just tuning in, we are talking about cybersecurity and and we have a fantastic guest here talking
Yes.
about that. And she is just sharing. And one thing I must say about Talia, so am I pronouncing your name properly? Because I don't want to get it wrong. Is it
No,
Talia or
Talia, yeah,
Talia?
that's right.
Talia. Okay, I just
Talia.
want to make it right. Because I mean, but the one thing I do want to say to our guest, she's an alumna of a HBCU. I'm pro
Yes.
HBCU, so I got
Yes.
to throw that out there. FAMU. And so,
Yes.
again,
Mhm.
because and the fact that you said you're from Jamaica and you came to, and you went to an HBCU. Of course, you went to Brown. Um, and I think HBCUs give us that. And I'm an alum of two HBCUs. And they give you those skills on how to survive in that in when you're
Hmm.
having to deal when you are the minority. And I think what
Yes.
you're doing now is really just an extension of that
Hmm.
in a field
Mhm.
that's
Absolutely.
again still needs to see a little bit more pepper in the salt. So in addition to now that let's talk about some advice for elders, for seniors. because of COVID, and we talked about of the pandemic, more people are using technology. You know, people who were afraid of
Mhm.
technology, Zoom changed the world. Okay, well, let's say
Mhm.
that. And we've only got a few more minutes, and so I before I even get to the question, I'm going to ask you to be willing to come back for a part two because we're just getting to the meat about the group,
Yes,
but
yes.
it was so important to tell people about your background and the
Yeah,
field that you in.
absolutely.
But again,
Mhm.
how has technology, because of the pandemic, have you seen more
Mhm.
elderly and people getting involved in why cybersecurity is so important now more than ever?
Mhm. I I think it's so amazing to live in this time. And I know technology can sometimes be intimidating, and even me, especially being on the security side, even like using my Face ID option on my iPhone, it took me a very long while before I actually decided to use it because I was always very security aware and not wanting certain things stored on certain devices. And so I think through education, I think it's a matter of knowing and being more aware. And one of the things that I do appreciate, especially about companies like Apple, they they use the privacy as a part of their selling point, right? They're very open and
Mhm.
transparent about
Mhm.
how they collect your data, what's happening to the data, and things like
Mhm.
that. But
Right.
I think for elderly Americans, living in an era where you have technology at your fingertips, look at, for example, telehealth. Having access to healthcare plays a critical role for helping older adults stay active and remaining independent at a certain age. And so, especially when you think about how to kind of navigate and move around, I think when you think about that technology, that's a very key benefit. And so when you think about independent living, you now have access to the social communication aspect of it, like video calls, and a lot of things that those who came before us did not have access to. And so even when you look at the pandemic, I think it provided an opportunity for us to all still stay connected even though isolated. And so in that regards,
Mhm.
I really really appreciate that. And so, and on the flip side, right, there's a downside to that because I
Mhm.
the access to technology is also dependent on the education and also the financial ability, because it costs to have access to technology or the internet and the Wi-Fi and things like
Mhm.
that. And so I
Mhm.
think you look at a couple different factors, and so it may affect the elderly very differently depending on some of those things, the education and the financial aspect of it as well.
Mhm.
You know that you're so, and it's so funny. You said you talked about the iPhone. I just upgraded my iPhone, so then I'm like you with the Face ID. I'm like, no, no. So I broke
Right.
down. I did it. So the fact that you did it makes me feel better that I did it. You know, and
Yeah.
again, there is just so much more information that we've got to get from you, and so I'm so glad that we've got you to guarantee to come back. But before we
Mhm.
leave for this segment, if people want to learn more about Black Girls in Cyber, how can they reach out to you? And we know we're going to come back for a part two, but in case they can't join us and they want to learn more about Black, they reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am on all social media platforms, and so is Black Girls in Cyber. We do have our website, blackgirlsincyber.com. We're on all Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Black Girls in Cyber. And Talia Parker, you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter, taliaparker.co. That's CO. And I see my LinkedIn is up there as well. So definitely feel free to
Mhm.
connect with me, linkedin.com -in Talia Parker.
Okay. Well, thank you
Excellent.
so much for being with us today. Once again, we've been talking with Talia Parker. She's a cybersecurity expert. She's started Black Girls in Cyber, and we're gonna come back next week and talk more to her and give more tips to you out there about cybersecurity. But now it's time for me to say goodbye. So, on behalf of my co-host Gene Hendricks and Sharon Mitchell, we want to thank you, and of course, our producer, Cami, and executive producer, Dr. E. Dewey Smith, and the media, Hope TV. we want to thank you once again for joining in for this edition of Forever Young, because we believe life begins at 40. Everything behind it is a dress rehearsal, and age ain't nothing but a number. So you're as young as you feel. Until the next time, take care, and remember, you're forever young. Goodbye.